Hello friends, today we are going to start with a new framework named CodeIgniter Web Framework. This framework is quite popular among the web developers, programmers or PHP developers. So for some people who want to start with the MVC platform, so CodeIgniter can be considered as a basic framework which is completely created in PHP, and it is like a basic framework which you can have a thorough understanding. If you are a beginner for MVC framework, then CodeIgniter is a best start. So let's have a look about CodeIgniter. Okay, starting with about our tutorial. CodeIgniter is a very powerful PHP framework with a very small footprint built for developers who need a simple and elegant toolkit. As I mentioned, simple and elegant means very easy to understand. It's not that complicated, like you have to follow certain protocols. So it is very simple and elegant toolkit to create a full featured web applications. So it is basically focused on the web application framework. You can only create web applications with the help of CodeIgniter. CodeIgniter, who created it? So it's like it was created by LS Lab. LS Lab is for the people or the persons, programmers running LS Lab are completely into web development. So there were a group of developers who created this MVC platform, that is namely CodeIgniter, and it is now a major project for British Columbia Institute of Technology. Okay, so this is what is a basic start for our tutorial, a small definition or a gist of it. Like CodeIgniter is nothing but a web development PHP framework. Now the audience. Who are the target audience? This tutorial has been prepared for PHP developers who would like to learn the art of developing websites using CodeIgniter. As I mentioned earlier in this chapter, it is completely related to a MVC platform. Like MVC means it's a model view controller platform. So it is completely different to that of a core PHP thing. So the person who wants to learn about CodeIgniter, like he wants to start for MVC platform, then he can start with CodeIgniter framework. It provides a complete understanding of the framework. You don't want to completely focus on one thing, like okay fine, I have to understand PHP first of all, that is the primary thing, and you don't want to completely rely on one thing, like okay I don't know MVC, should I start with CodeIgniter? That's not a problem over here. You don't know MVC, it's fine, but if you are good in PHP, at least with the core PHP thing, then you can start with CodeIgniter framework. So these are the target audience for us. Like the tutorial has been basically prepared for those who know PHP. I can specifically say that basic PHP, who would like to learn the art of developing websites using CodeIgniter. Like if you want to develop a website for in MVC platform, but you have a basic knowledge of PHP and okay, no knowledge about MVC, that is also a constraint. If you have a knowledge about MVC, that is a plus point. Then you can very well start with CodeIgniter framework. Prerequisites. Prerequisites mean something which is like essential before starting with this framework. Like what all things are important to understand and what all things you should keep it in your mind before starting this framework, because it happens that if you are starting with something which is on a higher module, then you should be clear with the ABCDs of it. So these are the prerequisites. So before you start proceeding with this tutorial, we assume, so it's like from the developer point of view, I say that we assume that you're already exposed to HTML, core PHP and advanced PHP. So HTML is like the hypertext markup language, which is common for all the web developers. They have a look of it. And next comes the core PHP module. So core PHP is nothing but the basic PHP thing. So people should understand about the core PHP module. And then comes the advanced PHP. Advanced PHP means the one after clearing the basics, you enter into the advanced PHP section. So these are the basic three prerequisites, and you should have WAM XAMPP software installed in it. If you're a PHP developer, you will definitely know what I actually mean to. The exact software should be installed in your system so that you can have CodeIgniter code base in your system. Next comes is the overview. Overview means a brief introduction, like okay, we saw about a gist of CodeIgniter, but it's also important to understand about the brief introduction, like why we are focusing on this framework. So it is an application development framework. Framework means it is, the protocol is predefined. It's not like that you have to create new files as and when it's needed, the logic is needed. You have predefined folders in it, you have to create your files associated to that. So that is framework all about. Now this framework can be used to develop websites using PHP. It is an open source framework, so it includes a very rich set of functionality. Rich set of functionality means that there are various built-in libraries in it. So these libraries can be used, and this will help to increase the speed of your website. Okay, your website development work, that can be increased over here because you have something which is inbuilt, that is the rich set of functionality. So with this rich set of functionality, it is like independent for creating some new modules as and when it is needed. You have something in it, you are just including that modules in your web development framework, and that's all you're done with your CodeIgniter web framework. So this is what is the basic overview about it, and it is completely done in PHP, which is a server-side scripting language. So that is also a plus point, which is an open source server-side scripting language. The next comes is that for the persons who know PHP very well. So if you know PHP well, then CodeIgniter will make your task easier. It's like a cakewalk for you if PHP concepts are clear for you. It has a very rich set of libraries as well as helpers. As I mentioned, like rich set of functionality are already present in it. By using CodeIgniter, you will save a lot of time. Why we save a lot of time? Because we have some functionalities inbuilt in it. You're just reusing those components as and when you need it. So this will reduce your time, like the amount of time you need for creating the website. So it will not be a time consuming constraint. So if you're developing website from the scratch, CodeIgniter will definitely be a best option to start with. A website built in CodeIgniter is secure as it has the ability to prevent various attacks. CodeIgniter also provides various kinds of security modules. So that's why it is like it helps with password protection, it encrypts your password, it keeps it from the cross-site scripting. So it's like you have a plus point over here that your website is secure also. In spite of the coding feature, like we have that coding functionality in an easy way, but apart from that we also have our website secure to it. So it's like a plus point, adding feather to your cap. So this would be a basic thing for CodeIgniter, that you can create it from the scratch without consuming your time. And next thing is that it's like very easy to keep it with a secure way. Security is another plus point which CodeIgniter includes. Apart from this, there are n number of features which CodeIgniter takes. That model view controller pattern is already there. It's extremely lightweight. It's not that heavyweight to keep it hosted in your server. Full-featured database classes with the support of several platforms. It includes a query builder database support. And the next thing, which is very, very crucial for PHP applications, is the session management and the cookie management. It also has the FTP class and the localization support. Localization means it can support various kinds of languages. It's not constrained to only a specific language. It has a pagination support, data encryption, benchmarking, full page caching. Full page caching means that all your pages will be cached and kept somewhere. Then we have error logging system, like you can log your particular error and also display the errors to the end user as and when needed. There is also a application profiling system and with a user agent class. So this helps to keep your helpers, which is a part of CodeIgniter. We have helpers over here to help the functionality as and when you need it. So every rich set of functionality over here is very, very useful for a web developer to just create a web application and host it in a website and keeping it in a secure way. So now in the next chapter, we'll focus about the installation of CodeIgniter. What are the basic steps for installation of the CodeIgniter? And later we will analyze about MVC platform and the other important aspects, like what are the controller, view and model, and how they are created basically in CodeIgniter. Hello, so previous chapter we had a basic introduction of what is CodeIgniter all about, how it is different from the Code PHP framework. Before starting off with it, the first thing that every developer does is installation of the typical environmental setup for CodeIgniter. So we'll start with that thing, and before that I would like to mention there are certain prerequisites. As I mentioned in the previous chapter, the PHP developer can understand a CodeIgniter framework very easily. So if it's for PHP, then there should be definitely some kind of a software stack included in your system. That can be WAMP for Windows applications, XAMPP, or if you are using another kind of Linux distributions or any Mac OS system, then it will differ as LAMP and MAMP. So once you have those particular systems set up, so this is how your local host will look. So local host typically means that my server port system where I can test and look out for the applications locally first of all. And if it works perfectly from end to end, then I will host it in my server. So I'm using WAMP server over here. WAMP server has the localhost system in this format. Here I have certain PHP info, which will be my PHP, which version I'm using right now. So that is 5.6.31. So I'm using for this system. And CodeIgniter supports for any kind of the PHP framework, so you don't have to worry about it. It does not have any constraint with respect to which PHP version it supports. Usually now the PHP versions greater than 5.5 is more portable to use. Then I have a PHP my admin. So PHP my admin is nothing but like it is the database kind of system where I'll configure my databases for the framework. So this is my PHP my admin. I will have a root and like a username and password. For now, I'm not getting deep into that. I just want to give an overlook of what is WAMP server all about. So after that, now let's move on to the official website of CodeIgniter. So that is codeigniter.com, which is my official website. Here you will have documentation, communities, and whatever the forums where if you have to see for any kind of doubts like what all is CodeIgniter all about, like what are the features newly added in CodeIgniter, if there is any new version added for CodeIgniter. So all these things are included in this documentation and the community sections. So this is the official website for CodeIgniter, that is codeigniter.com. So now we are going to start off with the environmental setup. So definitely we will need some kind of package. For me, my system is Windows. So I'll start with downloading a package over here. The latest version is CodeIgniter 3x, that is 3.1.6. It is mentioned over here. Others, there are legacy versions also. Suppose your PHP version does not support 3.x, like more than 3x, then you will have to look into it. So CodeIgniter 4 is also the upcoming version, but it's like in the beta version, or you can see it's not ready for the production use. So it's like pre-alpha one. So it is suggested that you should use the one which is like stable and which can develop applications quite quickly. So let's download CodeIgniter 3. You can get the source code in GitHub also. If there are certain accessibility issues, you can easily download it from here. So this is my zip file, and so it takes around 2.6 MB, so it takes quick. If your internet is on the higher priority or speed, then it will be a very plus point, so you don't have to worry about that. So it is getting downloaded. Till that we can have a look, like there are 3 flavors of CodeIgniter. First, the current one is like CodeIgniter 3, which is the current version. 4 is the future version, or you can say it's a beta version. And CodeIgniter 2, which is a legacy. Why it is mentioned as legacy? Because it is in the primitive side, like it is used, and like many more features have been added apart from that CodeIgniter 2 thing. Suppose if your PHP framework is not supporting for 3 versions, then it is suggested to use CodeIgniter 2. I have downloaded the zip file. Let's open it. So this is my CodeIgniter 3.1.6, which has certain folder structures. So I'm going to just copy this file, or just you can say open. I'll go to my download section. It will take a while because it is quite a big amount for a system to accept it and get it done. So this is my zip folder. I just extract it, take it to the C drive where my WAMP is suggested. Then I'll take a www folder, create a new folder, which is like my CodeIgniter project. Okay. Here I will copy that zip file and extract it. So my extraction will be in CodeIgniter project only. So I'll copy over there. It will extract all the contents, which is like all the subfolders which will it includes in it. So we'll have a look on each and every subfolder for a while. So it takes a while to extract. It's up to like 2.8 MB. So it is taking quite a while. So till that time, we'll have a look on the website structure. Like, okay, fine, we have the legacy system. This is the documentation part. So documentation includes like your documentation for 2 version, also 3.x versions. So 3.x version is the recent one. So you can take the documentation, you can download the user guide, okay, in the zip file, or you can get it in the online system also. Documentation of CodeIgniter is very well done. So because you can, if you are starting from the scratch, then it is very beneficial to have a simple functions, how it is designed, how controller it is designed, how views are designed. So it is always beneficial to refer the official documentation than to get into any other kind of system. So yeah, now I guess it has been extracted. Yes. So this is my code structure. I will also take all the folders and copy it outside. And now I will remove this both zip files. Okay, so my CodeIgniter project includes these folders if you'll have a look. So the name of the folders is application, system, and so on, whatever. So let's have a look on each and every folder for now. First comes is the application folder. So application folder, it as the name suggests, it's like it contains all the code of your application, okay, that you're building for your web application. So it has certain subfolders like cache, config, controllers, core, helpers, hooks, and so on. So let's have a look on each and every folder. First of all comes this cache. So this cache folder, this folder consists of all the cache pages, so which is basically used in your web application. These pages will increase the overall speed of accessing your pages. Okay, so this is what is cache all about. Next comes config. So as the name suggests, config means something related to the configuration of the web application. So this folder contains various files to configure the application. So with the help of config.php, so this folder, if you will have a look on this, I'll just open it in my Notepad++ to have a look. So this is something you can see there are certain parameters like base URL, index.php, and so on. So it's like it includes all the basic configurations that is required for your web application. User can configure the application, see the desired output in the browser. So using database.php, so this was about config.php. Next comes database.php. I'll just open this file. So in database.php also, if you can see, there are various configurations which is required to set up your database, like what will be your host name, the username, password, and the database which it will be connected to. Now my first thing I would like to mention, CodeIgniter definitely works with MySQL. So it has certain functionalities to work with other SQL databases or even NoSQL databases also. For now, we will be working with MySQL. So that's the best example if you are starting as a beginner. So this was about the config folder and the various files included in it. So there are even routes.php, migration.php, and many more. Each and every file will be associated in the further chapters. For now, we'll just have an overview of this. Next comes the controllers. Okay, so now comes the bigger picture. Controller is like the one which is in the C character, like MVC is like model view controller. So controllers are associated over here. This includes all the set of controllers that will be included in your web application, which is the very primary part of your application. Okay, so controllers is a must. Next comes core. Okay, so core is nothing but it's a base class of your application. So it includes certain basic features which we will have an overlook in the next chapters. Next is helpers. As the name suggests, it is nothing but it helps to create your application in a beneficial way. In short, in layman terms, I can say that helpers are nothing but the one which allows you to have a set of functions used in each and every page instead of writing them from the scratch. So helpers, it's like it does not give any kind of a primitive thing. It gives like you have a set of function, you just have to take this function and implement in your page. You don't have to write it from the basic thing. So that is helpers all about. Next comes is hooks. So hooks are nothing but the file in this folder provides a means to tap into and modify the user workings of the framework without hacking it to the core files. So hooks are nothing but, like as a name suggests, it connects between the pages. If there is any kind of the gaps in it, then hooks helps to do that. After hooks comes the language folder. So CodeIgniter has various functionality to include multilingual functionalities as well. So for now it is for English. So language folder consists of various language related files. After this comes the libraries. So libraries contains of files of the libraries developed for your application. So various libraries, or even you can say certain third-party libraries if you want. So all these can be associated over here in the application folder. Next comes the logs. This folder contains a file related to the log of the system. So if you have to maintain certain logs, then these logs will be associated over here. Then comes the models. Okay, so models are like the database login will be placed in this folder. So that's an example I just want to say. Models are nothing but whatever the database logic associated to it. So that all related files with .php extension will be included in this folder. Next is the third party. This is like another set of plugins. We saw the libraries, but if there are certain plugins which is to be associated, okay. So in this folder, you can place any plugins which will be used for your application. So that is third party. Okay. Next is views. Okay. Views is like the V of MVC application. So all the HTML files, whatever the end user can look and see, that HTML files will be kept in this views folder. So this was about the folder structure. So there are certain files also. .htaccess is nothing but the server configuration file if you are uploading in your server. So .htaccess is a must. For example, if you want to just keep a website live for the particular IP address and all, so that can be done with .htaccess file. Then there is index file. Index file is nothing but for the initializing of the project. So it just initializes your project. So this was about the application project. Next is the system. System includes certain subfolders. System, this folder consists of various CodeIgniter codes and libraries and any other files also. So it includes a core, database, fonts, helpers, language, libraries. Okay. So core, this folder is like a core class. Do not modify anything here. It is suggested over here. So it's like it is corely defined, specifically defined for CodeIgniter. All of your work will take place in the application folder. If you are new to CodeIgniter, so this is a basic point you should keep in mind. Even if you are in your intent is to extend your CodeIgniter code, then you have to work with hooks which is present in the application folder. So you don't have to disturb anything here in core folder as of now. So next is the database. Database folder consists of certain database libraries, the drivers and the database utilities. So that's what database is all about. Fonts includes the font related information and the utilities. Next is the helpers. Okay, so helpers is another, like this helpers is different as compared to that of the application helpers. So these helpers consist of standard CodeIgniter helpers. Okay, and after that comes the language. Language is nothing but whatever the language related files are associated with it. And the libraries. So libraries, these libraries are the CodeIgniter libraries. So these are not the third-party libraries. So this was about the system thing. And user guide is nothing but whatever you want to start, any documentation related files or anything you want to know. So that is present in your user guide. So this is a user guide to CodeIgniter basically, and it is of offline version to the developer, which is provided by the CodeIgniter framework. Using this, one can learn the functions of various libraries, functionalities, helpers, and it is recommended to use this user guide if you are building your first web application in CodeIgniter. So besides these, there are 3 folders also. There are certain basic files also. So each one of them has certain contribution to it. But for now, your basic thing is that whenever I initialize my CodeIgniter application, it starts with index.php and access this application folder. So that's very important as of now. Application architecture. Every framework has its own set of architecture and it has been well defined for it. The same applies to that for CodeIgniter. We will have a look of application architecture with the help of this diagram. So this diagram very well defines like how the flow of CodeIgniter takes place. Like a project in CodeIgniter is termed as an application. So it starts from n number of steps and follows to certain routines and some set of functions. So first comes to the first step, that is the index.php. So as shown in this figure, whenever a request comes to CodeIgniter, it first goes to index.php. Index.php verifies like what page it is, and that verification is done under step number 2, that is routing. So this is the second step, and routing will decide whether to pass this request what we are getting from index.php to step number 3 or step number 4. Step number 3 is like it's for caching, and step number 4 is for security. If you see that the requested page which you have fetched from index.php, whatever the request the user is sending it, it is already existing in the system or the user has already passed it before. So it's like if the requested page is already there in caching mode, then it goes to step number 3. But in caching mode, it says that the requested page is completely new and it was not found in the earlier request which we have fetched from the user. Then it goes to step number 4, that is security. So if the requested page does not exist in caching, then routing will pass the requested page to step number 4, security. Security will perform the list of security checks, whether the security check like whether there is any malware or not. So once the security check is clear, it will go to step number 5. Step number 5 over here you see, I mentioned it is an application controller. So before passing the request to the application controller, always a security check takes place. The security of the submitted data is checked. After the security check, the application controller loads the necessary models, libraries, helpers, plugins, scripts. Once all these has been loaded, it checks for the functionality and the response is being fetched. The response fetched is shown in view. The view will render the available data and pass it on to the caching. So it is like application controller interacts with the models as well as the third-party libraries, helpers, some helping functionality which increases the functionality with set of plugins as well as scripts. So it sends a response to the view. Now what does a view does? The view will render the available data and pass it to caching. Caching is like it keeps a cache, like it is the requested page and it was already requested from the user. So as the requested page was not cached for the first time, like we did it, so this time it will be cached. So it will not again go through the security checks. If a user asks for the page, it will go to the caching mode and the response will be sent immediately. So the requested page when it was not cached before, so this time it is cached. To process this page, the future request, it will directly go to the caching mode and you can get the output accordingly. So this was about the understanding of the application architecture of CodeIgniter. Moving on to the next thing, that is MVC Framework. MVC means Model View Controller. It is an acronym of Model View Controller, which is a very popular web framework. It is not only under PHP, various JavaScript models also are taken under MVC Framework. Our framework, that is CodeIgniter, is based on Model View Controller development pattern. This is a design pattern basically. So MVC is nothing but a software approach that separates application logic from presentation. In practice, it permits your web pages to contain minimal scripting since the presentation is separate from the PHP scripting. So MVC is nothing but a software approach that separates the application logic from presentation. So in practice, MVC is a software approach which permits your web page to contain minimal scripting since the presentation is separate from PHP scripting. Starting with the first one is the model. What is model? Model represents your data structures. Typically, your model classes will contain the function which will help you to fetch the result of all the queries. The queries can be retrieve, insert and update information in your database. So this data is actually transmitted to the controller. Okay, next comes is view. We had a look on model, now it's about view. View is information that is being presented to a user. What a user can see. It's like the end user can see whatever it is presented in a view. Typically, it is nothing but the HTML files which are taken over here. A view will be normally a web page, but in CodeIgniter, a view can also be a page fragment like a header or a footer. It can also be an RSS page or any other type of a page like a output page which is visible to the user. Next comes the controller. See, here only from the picture we can get that controller is an intermediary between model as well as a view. The controller serves as an intermediary between model and view and any other resources related to your complete web application. The browser interacts with the controller and the controller interacts with the view and model accordingly as per your request. Okay, so any resources needed for the HTTP request and to generate a web page, the basic step is done in controller and the controller fetches the response from view as well as model. If it is related to something in database, then it interacts with the model and accordingly sends the response to the view. But if it is only with interaction of some kind of a static page, then view and controller coordinate with each other and get the response accordingly. So in this way, the complete MVC framework takes place in CodeIgniter. Now in the next chapter, we'll understand about the basic concepts of CodeIgniter, like how a controller is designed, how a model is designed, and how a view is designed. And later on, we'll understand about the CRUD functionality in CodeIgniter. We had an overlook like what all the folders are included for CodeIgniter project and many more things. Now we'll start with the basic functionalities of CodeIgniter, like what is to be included, what all set of applications are needed for the CodeIgniter project. So first of all, starting with the application folder. As I mentioned, all the controllers will be associated over here. Let's move on to a browser and just run out this application. Before that, I would like to mention I'm using brackets, which is the editor, which is usually used for any JavaScript or any kind of the PHP application system. So I'm using this code editor where you can easily have a look of what all folders are there, what all files are opened, and what all files are edited, and many more things. You can even launch this particular file in the browser. For our system, as it is a PHP framework, I'm not launching it because it is completely interdependent or something with respect to other third-party libraries and many more. So I'm using brackets for now. I'm just increasing the font size. This will give a better picture. Now let's start with the browser point of view. I'll just open my particular project, localhost. My project name was CodeIgniter project. So I'm just opening my project. If you'll just see, I get to the welcome page which says that welcome to CodeIgniter, and whatever you're getting it is done under views, which includes welcome message.php, and the corresponding controller for this page is found on in controllers welcome.php. So I have opened my brackets folder. Now I'm going to check out, like this is my index function. Inside the controllers, I have welcome.php, also index.html. So in welcome.php, if you see, a controller includes, like it extends a particular class name which is called as CI underscore controller. CI underscore controller is the class which is associated for the particular controller in CodeIgniter. If you want to start off with the controller, you should always extend this class in your functionality. So controllers are nothing but a simple class file. Okay, as the name suggests, it controls the whole application by the URI. Okay, the next comes public function index. Index is nothing but the first function. I'll mention a comment over here which will say this is the first function, or this is the default function which is accessed by the controller. So I'll mention a comment in this default function accessed by the controller. Okay, so I'll just save this file. Now I see public function index which loads a particular view. Okay, if I say over here echo hello world, and if I run this particular test in my suppose for example I just like to comment it out and check it, like if I should get an output which is desired from my point of view. So I say echo and my parameters will be hello this is your CodeIgniter application. Okay, I'll just save this file. And now if I have a look over here, my browser output should be with CodeIgniter project mentioning with index.php. So if I say index.php, it should call for the controller. So it is giving some error. We'll do one thing. Instead of putting an echo over here, we'll do like we will call for a view, and over there I will send my customized message. So if you see, this is the functionality for CodeIgniter for loading a particular view. A controller interacts with a view and the model as we saw in the previous chapters. So controller we call for the particular view, that is welcome message. So let's move to our folder views and the welcome message.php. So if you have a look over here, this is a typical HTML file which any user will develop. And here I say this is my div ID. Okay. Here my particular div gives the output which I see on my browser. So if I say now localhost CodeIgniter project, I see this particular div. I just want to change this complete div and the look and feel. So I'll just change my content over here. Just add a comment first of all. Let this be commented. So I'm commenting this particular path over here. Okay, now my comment will be there. Now I'll just put one h1 tag, or the only h1 tag which is associated with CodeIgniter, like welcome to CodeIgniter. This is your first project. Let's go to the browser. See, other things were eliminated, only my first h1 tag was visible. So now you got a interaction, like how model views and controllers interact with each other. I just mentioned over there in my controller section, like I load this particular view and my view will be designed accordingly, like how I just want to see. If you want to see a table, your table will be represented over there. If you want to check out for some particular image, that will be represented only through view. So this is what is calling a controller and how it is associated with the view. So if you get for the view is nothing but a simple, or you can say a complex web page which can be called by the controller. The web page can contain a header, footer, sidebar, etc. whatever is required. A view cannot be called directly. Let us create a simple. So this is like a simple view which is like there. And all the views are present inside the application and the views folder. So this was my welcome message PHP. This is like a typical message which is given by any of the, you can say any of the basic CodeIgniter application. So loading a view is associated with this function, that is $this representing to the load function and view with the view name. So my view name was welcome underscore message PHP. So I'll just mention over here like welcome underscore message, and my view will be launch. Now I'll have a flow chart. I'll just show that. With respect to that, it will give the perfect illustration like how a controller and view are associated to each other. So this is our flow chart which represents the communication between the controller and the view. Suppose this is your HTTP, okay, your domain name and index.php and texts. If you just check out for this URI will first call your index.php file in your CodeIgniter folder, and then it will move to test. What is test? Test is nothing but the file associated with the controller, that is controllers, it will have test.php. Okay, and this index.php file will call for the particular class, and it will call for controllers which includes test.php. As the method name hasn't passed in the URI, the default will be index method. If you have some particular method name, then that method name will be given as controllers with that associated method name. And it should be called, which will be indirectly called the views. If it has some particular views associated with it, as I mentioned in my previous example, it will load for a view and it will give the output. So if it has some views, then it will go to the views folder. which will include the associated file, and the views folder will be loaded, which will render the view file, and it will generate the output, like whatever the view file includes, as it is the HTML file. So whatever the view file has this set of functionalities and many more, so all that file will be embedded over here, and you will see the output accordingly. Previously we got an error because we directly skipped out the view part, which is not possible like the way we do in core PHP functionality. So that's why the main focus over here is that first of all you need to access for the controller, which includes the test.php file, as the name will be given over there, hasn't passed in URI. If there is no name passed in the URI, it will definitely access for the default function, as we saw in our previous example. As we saw in the previous example, like it calls for the default function, that is index. So it will call for the index method, which will be called, and it will indirectly call application views test.php. So test.php is just like a demo example. In our previous example, we saw it was welcome_message.php. It will go to the views. The views will render the view file which is associated to it, and it will generate the output. Now there will be a doubt in your mind, like where does a model fit inside this? Model has a complete different structure, because model is something which is like it associates only with the interaction to the database. If there is no database as such, you just want to show the static kind of representation, then controller and views are quite enough to give the output as you require. So you don't have to strictly follow the functionality like you need a model every time when you launch the CodeIgniter application. There are certain web applications which include the static file. For example, if you say FAQs, okay, I have designed an FAQ module, just like an example I'm telling for now. So FAQ module will have like a set of questions and answers, do's and don'ts, like what will be the do's and don'ts. In such a scenario, it is always beneficial to include a function inside a controller which will load this view, and the view will have a systematic approach, like what will be the frequently asked questions, what are do's and don'ts, and many more things. So this pattern will help you to have static pages intact in your web application. So this was a flowchart for understanding the flow between a controller and view in CodeIgniter.